What's up, guys? I'm your host, Mike C Squared, and this is One Giant Leap for Geeks. On this episode, we will be doing the obligatory year-end best and worst of list. I decided to begin with that possibly overzealous, probably condescending intro to make a point. I like best and worst of lists. I rather enjoy them. Thank you very much. I don't like the concept of putting a numerical value on something I like over something else I also like. I like different things for different reasons. There are all kinds of external factors that affect my experiences. I don't feel it's fair to compare things in that way. Sorry. So, my list will be different in two ways. 1. The numerical position of any given subjects on these lists do not indicate my quote-unquote like of that subject over any other subject on said list. There are plenty of things not included on these lists that I liked or disliked, but wanted to keep these lists at 10 with one honorable mention apiece. The position of these subjects is random. These are just a collection of things I enjoyed or disliked from the year of our Lord, 2017. 2. These lists are comprised of movies, TV shows, games, anime, and events in geekdom from the prior year. It would be illogical to make comparisons of subjects on these lists based on their numerical position to each other, seeing as those two subjects may or may not be comparable, and trying to judge which one is quote-unquote better is silly. So, I will now ask all the passengers to take their seats and prepare for landing.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for
Geeks. The best. Honorable mention. Split. M. Night Shyamalan has finally made a good movie. Not an okay, that's passable, I can live with that, but an actual good movie. And I am shocked. I used to love M. Night Shyamalan. That man could do no wrong to me. Do you remember when they thought he was going to be the next fucking Steven Spielberg? He was the man. Sixth Sense, some people were kind of, on the fence about Signs. I like that movie. Unbreakable was incredible, and then he just started making these string of just flops, from Lady in the Water to The Village and The Happening, and it was just, oh god, it was just terrible. And even though he kind of started having this little comeback thing with the Blumhouse Studios, I believe, the Visit or something to the effect of that, where the kids go to the grandparents' house, but that one wasn't really all that great either, from what I hear. I did not catch that one. I kind of had given up on M. Night, and Split, I had to really wait until a lot of word of mouth finally turned me over to go see that movie. But when I did, I was pleasantly surprised, because I feel that M. Night, where he lost his way was he got too many people around him to say yes, and he had too many hits. It was almost like his downfall was being too successful, because studios and producers started kind of just letting him do his thing, and it's it's been working out so far, why not continue to let him do that, right? But the problem is, once he kind of got free reign to do what he wanted, and his budgets kept increasing. I mean, just look at Avatar. Jesus Christ, The Last Airbender. That oh my god. That movie could have been so great, and it's just terrible. But alas, when they gave M. Night these ginormous budgets and didn't put any restraints on his creative vision, he kind of went off the rails. And I think M. Night has always worked better with a smaller budget, and I feel like Split is such a good movie because he had to really focus on the story and not the spectacle, and trying to work in his little weird twists and things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, this movie does have twists, but they are satisfying twists and they're not obnoxious, and it helps, the story move along. James McAvoy is, well, God, what can I say? I mean, he has always been a good actor, but this is maybe his best performance. almost hands down in anything else he's been in. Like, I love him as Professor X. I really liked, him when I first saw him in Wanted, even though I did not like that movie. I like Wanted as an action movie itself, but I don't like Wanted as an adaptation of that graphic novel, because that is not what Wanted was. Anywho, James McAvoy's always been a good actor, but this was incredible. Like, how he was able to just slip in and out of these different personalities, from the mother figure to the artist and the child, and the brute one, and then the beast at the end. Like, he was able to play each character with enough nuances to where they actually felt like different personalities and not just him putting on a face, so to speak. It never came across as though he was pretending to be a personality until he wanted to be doing that. When one of the personalities is trying to pretend that they are another personality to not reveal the fact that they have taken over the psyche, as it were. But in general, the way he portrayed, having this mental illness, he was able to give it like a mythic, science fiction horror movie, which is what it is, quality. But at the same time, it felt real and it didn't feel too exploitative. To degrees it did, but of people with this condition. The ending, Jesus Christ, I shit my pants when the ending happened. I somehow was able to avoid spoilers for that movie up until the point that I actually saw it. And when I did, Jesus Christ, that reveal was great. Of all the M. Night Shyamalan movies that he has put out, hands down, Unbreakable is my favorite, hands down. But I never thought that there would be a continuation of that. I mean, it felt like such an enclosed story, and M. Night says that he's always had some kind of plan for some kind of sequel, which who fucking knows. But the way that the movie ended, it felt very finite and complete when it got to the credits. But to see Sam Jackson and Bruce Willis come back, oh, that's going to be great. Like that, I believe it's going to be called Glass. Is the movie, is the title of the I guess third movie in this surprise trilogy that no one knew was actually a thing. But yeah, no, Split was great. Split was great, but I needed to keep this at 10, so this was not quite great enough for me to put it on my list, but it is an honorable mention. Number 10, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I never in my adult life, or at any point in my life, ever thought that I would be sitting in a dark theater, crowded around with a bunch of other people, staring at a screen where a man with a blue face and a red fin on his head made me cry like a fucking baby. Like, I saw Volume 2 with my girlfriend, and it was so embarrassing, but I cried like a baby at Yondu's death. It was something about that where, if you've ever had any kind of familial drama or problems with your father, then you'll kind of understand where I'm coming from. But when he says that line to him, like, he might have raised you, but he wasn't your daddy, like, that's the part that finally broke me. Yondu was just like such a throwaway character in the first movie. I mean, the first movie is great, but I mean, his character is not all that deep. I mean, he's the leader of the Ravagers, and he's just a bad guy. There's not much to his characterization in the movie, and they took him and expanded his part and fleshed out his backstory and made me care so much. I did a complete 180 on Yandu. I went from, oh god, why is he in this one too, to, oh my god, I can't believe he won't be in the next one. I mean, wow, that is impressive. Like, James Gunn, you did a really good job on making me care about Yandu, which I never thought I would ever actually be saying out loud. Also, Drax and Rocket got so much more needed character development. Drax and Rocket had really good character arcs in this one. I mean, from Drax being more humanized, so to speak, and giving him someone who he could kind of pair up with, but it's kind of like this odd couple pairing because they're so different, but yet still kind of using that trope to bring out the levels to his personality and showing that he's more than just this kind of big dumb oaf who doesn't get sarcasm and metaphors and things like that. Rocket, oh god, Rocket was hilarious in the first Guardians. I mean, he was one of the best things about it outside of Groot, and he was great, but he was really one note. There was not a whole lot to Rocket. He was just this snide, little shit. And they tried to kind of, give him a little bit more depth by, talking about how he was experimented on and that's how he is the way he is and, things like that. But that comes at a point in the movie where they were trying to simultaneously give him some kind of important character moment while having these important story beats, and I feel like his moment kind of got lost in the shuffle of that. Drax also had a moment during that scene as well, and I feel like that kind of got lost in the shuffle. Like, I don't want to seem like they did not give Drax and Rocket, arcs in the first Guardians, because they did. But in this movie, it was a vital part of the story and didn't feel so passive. It felt like, yes, the point of this is for these characters to go on these arcs throughout this story. The story was more secondary. There wasn't this big MacGuffin for them to chase like there was in the first movie, and they really got to dig deeper into the characters, and I really like that. The soundtrack is still great. I mean, God, like, I had never even heard The Chain before this movie, and they play it, I believe, twice in the movie, and it's in the trailers and things like that. And oh my god, like that the lyrics and just the tempo and the feelings that song evokes is really really well paired with the movie. Like, I don't know if James Gunn specifically picked out the tracks for the soundtrack on his own when he's putting together and writing the movie, or if they're chosen after the fact and it's put together, post, or in post, I should say. But the soundtrack is really, really good. That's not really my genre of music per se, nor my, decade or time of music, but there was some good fucking tracks in there. It really was. I won't lie. Um, I mean, overall, God, the movie is great, and I mean, I'm even more excited to see them in Infinity War now, because not only do I want to see what's going to happen with them and running into Thor and, meeting the rest of the Avengers and Thanos and everything else, but, what's going to happen with the Adam Warlock? Is he going to show up? Is they're going to hold it off to the third movie? And then once Infinity War is over, what do we do with the Guardians after that? Like, what happens in Guardians Volume 3? So there's a lot of questions and a lot of things to be excited for in the next few years, so we got that to look forward to. Number 9, War for the Planet of the Apes. this was a really great ending to a surprisingly deep blockbuster trilogy. Who would have thought that a Planet of the Apes movie would have so much to say about society and race relations and tribalism and immigration and culture and just all kinds of things. Talking monkeys, man, like seriously. And X-Men cannot get their shit together for the life of them, and they got fucking superpowers and shit. Oh my god. The Planet of the Apes franchise has been really, focused on making you care about the ape species and especially Caesar. But the supporting cast was always important as well, and just really, really, really humanizing the characters throughout the films. There was this really nice arc throughout all three films that Caesar went on, from the beginning and his vulnerability and naivety, and him being exposed to the quote unquote real world, and how he's treated by other humans that isn't his quote unquote father, and him realizing that he's not viewed as an equal by the human species, and then him breaking away from that and trying to start something of his own, to the second film of him in the beginnings of his tribe and his people bringing their or leaving their mark on their home, and really claiming something for themselves, to there's still ongoing conflict with the humans and still trying to coexist with them, but then having like a civil uprising within his own ranks. And now finally to this film, to where he's finally for the most part found peace outside of the couple skirmishes they have here and there, to his family being killed and him going on this revenge story. Like, the whole movie is a revenge movie, really. It's not a we're taking over and enslaving the humans and this, that, and the other. It's like, we fucked with him and he finally just broke. It was awesome seeing a darker side of Caesar, but yet he still remained the character that we know from Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It was, I could relate to him even so much more now, even though he was on a darker path than he was in the past movies. He had revenge in his heart, but yet could still kind of understand where the human side was coming from. They pretty much pulled some, Nazi Germany Holocaust type shit in this one, and they were doing some pretty awful things to Caesar's people, and some of them were turning and going over to the human side, trying to, I guess, self-preservation, I guess, and turning against their own kind. And it was a lot of allegories for a lot of different things going on in that movie, and I'm like, I felt like that movie is smarter than the franchise kind of deserves, almost. I mean, or just, I guess the ideas are smarter than this franchise deserves in general, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's the Planet of the Apes, but it's so good. Woody Harrelson was probably the best villain this series has had, like, hands down. I mean, and I love come on, Commissioner Gordon, the villain in The Fifth Element, and The Professional, Gary Oldman. There we go. Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman, I is probably like one of my favorite actors, living or dead. Like seriously, no lie. And I am actually saying out loud that I thought that Woody Harrelson was a better villain than he was in a franchise that they were both in. Crazy enough, but I'm saying it. I mean, he in the first movie, all the villains were real like caricatures. They weren't characters, they were caricatures. And in the second movie, Gary Oldman's character was a lot more fleshed out, and they kind of had like a similar thing going on between him and Woody Harrelson's character, where it's like, oh, you know, this personal loss and this, that, and the other, and they're trying to do what they feel they have to in these times of, you know, the apocalypse, basically. But the way Woody Harrelson's character came across, even though he had the elements of being, you know, of you empathizing with him in his position, because, you know, the virus has gone from killing, you know, people, and the ones that are survived are now, you know, losing their, you know, intellect and becoming, you know, more primitive in their thinking and actions. And, you know, he feels that he has to do away with the ones who are sick and kill them because there's no help for them. And, you know, he's trying to kill off the apes because he feels that it's their fault that this is happening, and yada yada. But at the end of it, he still was willing to kill his kids and, you know, his own men and everything else. So it was like, that's what made him such a great villain, because he was a horrible person, but at the same time, you kind of understood why he was doing what he was doing, but you could never quite meet him in the middle and co-sign it. You know, you could never come to terms with what he was doing because it was so evil. And he, I feel like, took a bit of joy in it. But again, this is why I say he was such a great villain, because he has those layers. He has those things about him that make you want to keep watching him whenever he's on screen, and keep you thinking about him when he's not. So good, so good, so good. The way that it ended was satisfying. I mean, I figured that Caesar would die by the end of the movie, but the way that played out was just fine. And I feel that they peppered enough Easter eggs throughout this, that so if they don't decide to make another, you know, another movie beyond this, you know where this is going to lead directly into. There's a lot of things set up, you know, with, especially with Nova and the virus, you know, making the humans more primitive, and them kind of fighting and killing each other off, like the last like vestiges of like military might and stuff like that. So it's like now, you know, all the soldiers, quote unquote, are gone, and all the military might, so whatever humans are left, are probably going into their primitive state and don't really have a civilized structure anymore. And the apes are pretty much, you know, in, I don't know if you'd want to call it Eden, or basically, you know, paradise. And, you know, they're going to now go from here into, I could see maybe 10 years max, you know, and we're in the first Planet of the Apes movie by that point. So they planted enough seeds to where if they make another one, they can kind of fill in those in between gaps. But if they don't, we all know where it's going, and there isn't these big questions of, okay, well, how did they get to this point? And if, you know, this, that, and the other happened, how do we go beyond that to the here? So, yeah, they did an awesome job. Number 8, Get Out. This movie came out of fucking nowhere. Who knew Jordan Peele could direct anything? I mean, let alone a horror movie, a good horror movie. I mean, this thing is one of the best horror movie we've had in years. And it's on such a niche subject that, I mean, even I didn't know that I was afraid of. I mean, the black men's fear of being a fish out of water around all too welcoming suburbanite white people. I didn't even realize that that was a phobia until it was addressed about when you are kind of surrounded by people who aren't necessarily like you culturally, and how they begin to treat you as an object as opposed to a person, and talk about you in objectified ways that you wouldn't if they weren't black, if that makes any sense. Asking you questions. I mean, the scene where they're talking to him about his likes and different things like that, and what he feels about being a black man in America today, and yada yada, like all that stuff. You know, it really struck a nerve with me, and apparently a lot of other people, because a lot of people went and seen this movie. A lot of people. And trust me, not every black person on the face of this earth went to the movie theater and saw Get Out. So there was a whole hell of a lot of other races that enjoyed the movie and wanted to see it as well. But I mean, this really, it had something to say, and it never shied away from it. I mean, this movie, I mean, it's bold in what it's asserting. Like, I don't necessarily agree with the message that some people are taking away from it, but I can see how they got there because of how the movie comes across. um it's very, fight the power, man, like, for real. But it's good. It's good. It never got afraid. It never backed down from the point that it was trying to make, and I can respect that. I can't wait to see what Jordan Peele does after this. I mean, give him whatever. Like, there was rumors for a while that they might give him an Akira movie, or something like that. What? Hey, do it, man. Look, whatever he wants to do, I am behind it and with it, because he is a breath of fresh air that we have needed in horror for a while, and I'm really excited to see his next project. Number 7. Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events. You know, I'm. It's weird. I'm having all these, like, revelations doing this list. I'm shocked again that I'm going to say this out loud, but I liked Neil Patrick Harris's portrayal of a character more than Jim Carrey's. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I love Jim Carrey. Like, Jim Carrey can do no wrong to me. Jim Carrey is a godsend to me. I mean, from all the way back to Fire Marshal Bill and In Living Color, to, oh god, Ace Ventura, the Mask, Cuban Pete. I literally have that song on my phone right now that I listen to just in my random rotation of music. But with this, Neil Patrick Harris, I liked his portrayal of Count Olaf more. I think what it was is that there was something about Jim Carrey's Count Olaf that was a little bit too sinister for me. You know what I mean? Like, there was something that just oozed creepy on, like, that I wouldn't leave anyone, especially children, around him. Now, I know that that's kind of the point of Count Olaf, but I meant more in, like, a, are we sure he's not on, like, a sex offender registry, type thing. But the way Neil Patrick Harris portrayed this, he did it in such a way to where he was more sniveling, and conniving than, like, creepy, blacked out windows in a van. The jokes in this, and I think that's why I like this portrayal of Count Olaf more is because the jokes in this really caught me off guard. Like there were things that they said in this movie that I had never even thought that someone would ever say. Okay, for example, there's a scene where the one of the characters that are trying to help expose what's going on with the children and get them out of there gets killed, and there's police there and they're trying to investigate and things like that, and um, Count Olaf is playing a character, and he's supposed to be a coroner and or a doctor, I believe, and his name is Stefano, and there's a scene where the kids are trying to get him to do something or other. That part's irrelevant. The setup's irrelevant. I'm horrible at trying to tell this story. I'm sorry. Um, Basically, she's trying to get him to go into another room so they can tell the police the truth of what's going on, but he doesn't want to leave. And she says something to him, and he basically tells her that I would slap you in the throat. And I don't know, there was something about the accent and the delivery of the line and everything else that it caught me off guard, and it put me in tears, and just things like that just kept happening throughout the movie. Every time he said Stefano, just all his little, his makeup disguises and the names that he would come up with, and his little, acting troupe that would follow him around and help him with his schemes. It was, oh my god, it was too funny. The kids, they were actually really funny too, and the kids overall were just really good. I thought that the kids had good screen presence, and they weren't annoying like sometimes kids can be in movies and shows and things like that, and I was really worried about that. The baby was pretty fucking hilarious, and I'm pretty sure that baby was like CG for probably about a good half of that movie. There's a lot of uncanny valley shit going on with that baby throughout the movie, and I'm like, are they just like CGing the baby's face on like a doll or something, or like the other side of the baby's head because it just won't look at the camera? Like, what's going on here right now? But no, the kids are really good, and I think that they were cast well for brother and sister and how they played off each other, because they were good actors in their own right, but they were really convincing as siblings as well. Um, my only complaint about, and I mean, but this is kind of a praise as well, because it it's part of that catching you off guard, like unexpected humor, but at the same time it's just too much. The supporting cast is too dumb to live. I mean, period. They are. I mean, besides Count Olaf and the children, the supporting cast is just literally too dumb to be alive. There are things that happen throughout this show, and just deceptions that are pulled over on people where it's so obvious, and it's a comedy. I understand how comedy works. Yes, it's supposed to be, ridiculous, and you're supposed to suspend your disbelief to some degree, but it's a little bit too much, and every character feels like they are just the dumbest person who has ever walked the face of the earth in any respect. And it kind of bothered me throughout it, but that at the same time is where some of the best jokes come from, because these people are so stupid. So I was able to let that go, but I felt the need to put that in there, that the supporting cast is too dumb to live. Number 6, John Wick 2. I am so glad to see Keanu Reeves kicking ass again. Keanu Reeves is like the best action star to have ever lived. Like, he is the one. Okay, now regardless of how you feel about The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions, The Matrix is the best action movie of all time. I'm fucking saying it right here, right now. Fight me, I don't care. But yeah, I mean, speed, The Point Break, Bill and Ted. Keanu Reeves is awesome. Like, everybody gives him shit about him being a stale, bland actor, and his delivery is bad. And don't get me wrong, he's had some pretty shitty performances, but I mean, he's never gonna win an Oscar for, best dramatic actor or whatever. But still, leave the man alone. He was he was in the fucking what is that movie with I think it's Sandra Bullock, The Lake House. Yeah, that shit. So cut him some fucking credit, all right? Leave that man alone. He done paid his dues, all right? But to piggyback right after the events of John Wick 1, this movie, I mean, just like kicked into high gear from like the word go and never stopped. There was so much action in this movie, and it is as good as it was in the first movie. And just the locations that they go to, but how they choreographed the fight scenes and the gunfights in these locations, that like you would have never seen this in other scenarios. I mean, I think they go to fucking Rome or some shit. I'm like, it's beautiful. Like, they're like the catacombs, like having like gunfights and shit, and through streets and crashing through like picture windows and hotel lobbies. I mean, the airport, and the little silencers and everything. Like, all the action beats were well put together, but I think that the environment that they were put in is what really brought out something special in the fight scenes, and made them stand out more so than your average, action movie that you would see. I don't know, Fast and Furious or something like that. I don't know. This took it to like another level. The world that they developed and built out from is massive. Like, the world of the hitmen and women is massive. The amount of people that were there to kill him at the end, when he kind of called them off and gave him like a head start, was ridiculous, man. Like, it seemed like all of New York had came to that one area to kill fucking John Wick, and it was dope as shit. Like, I mean, from you getting the little peppered sprinkles of the universe that the bigger universe that was around this story, but wasn't really going to be focused on in the first John Wick. And they took all those seeds and watered them and cultivated them and let them grow, and they sprouted out into this sprawling universe of, they have their own currency, to their own, room and board. They have rules. They have their own telephone network, contracts on, each other. They have blood oaths and different things like that, and trinkets and medallions. And somebody actually made a really cool action movie, put a couple little things in there to hint at something more, and then actually made another really good action movie, and then explained and sprouted those things out and made those elements that they, just kind of whispered in the original, vital parts of the next story. And this is just a crazy. This shit all started over a dead dog and a stolen car, man. Remember, the first John Wick is fucking stupid, okay? It's a good fucking movie, but the setup is dumb and the premise is just ridiculous. But still, we started from that, and we have built out into this just a franchise now. And I cannot wait to see where we go with this, because they can just keep growing, as there is no template for what they have to do. They can do whatever they want, and that's what's so exciting about it. Can we talk about that Lawrence Fishburne cameo, though? To see Morpheus and Neo together on the screen again. I mean, again, The Matrix is the best action movie ever. I don't care. Fight me. But to see those two actors on screen together again was great, and I felt like his whole character and all the dialogue that he had to read was written in this kind of meta way to where it all kept going like, oh, kind of sort of saying stuff that, kind of related to the Matrix and da da da, but oh man, it was great to see them together again. And honestly, I'm really hoping that they give him a bigger part in the next film so we can see them two together again. And I mean, I don't necessarily need it to be in, this teacher student kind of relationship, just anything. I mean, even if they're enemies, he could be the villain of the next one, and I'd be totally fine with that, just to get a chance to see them back together again. Like there's something about the way they bounce off each other and then the chemistry that they have on screen together that makes you always want to see them together. If they could have made just a buddy cop movie, with Lawrence Fishburne and Keanu Reeves, I'd go see that shit a million times and own it on every platform that I could have it on. John Wick was not a fluke, and they have proven that with John Wick 2, and I am almost certain, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that they are going to continue this into the future. Number 5, Attack on Titan, Season 2. It's about damn time. It's been 4 years too long. But good things come to those who wait. The animation studio behind this show is top notch. The animation in Attack on Titan is great. I mean, if you're not watching Attack on Titan, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. You are tripping. Regardless if you like anime or not, Attack on Titan is a good show. It's a good story. It's well drawn and it's exciting and fast paced, and it does not let you down. This second season it expands on everything that we know so far on the story and catching up with where Eren and the other scouts are after the fight with the female Titan and discovering the Titans in the walls. And I'm actually keeping up with the manga, and I am current with the manga, so I'm well past where we are in the anime. So I'm really excited to see where this is going to go going forward, because I know how this is going to play out. I know where this is going, and we haven't even hit like the tip of the iceberg, barely. The story isn't even really to the good parts yet. You just wait. Like there's things that I'm excited to see going forward, and as long as Studio Madhouse can keep putting this out and maintain the quality of work that they've done so far, I'm willing to stay with it. It's just these hiatuses are killing me. Like we gotta figure out some kind of way to crank these things out faster. Jesus. Yeah, no, this season was great. There was the reveal of the coordinate power to control the other Titans, and we're gonna start to get into bloodlines and the Titan memories and just all kinds of things. There's just a lot of stuff that I don't want to spoil for anyone who isn't reading the manga and doesn't know some of the things that are going to be coming up in future seasons. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but yeah, what's happened so far is been it's been great, but it's going to get a whole lot better. And this season was great. I mean, seeing the Beast Titan in motion and hearing him speak and everything, and watching him fight, and the way he throws the boulders like baseballs and shit. It's fucking dope. It is so dope. Like, Attack on Titan is such a odd show because there's just these things about it and tropes and things like that you don't normally see in shows like this, and it's it's fucking awesome. But yeah, no, it's not what I would normally expect coming from an anime. This seems like some really like left field, like late night sci-fi channel type concept shows, but Attack on Titan is it's amazing, and they've kept it up. I mean, it came out on April Fool's Day, so I mean, I didn't even think it was real when it got dropped and released, but I was like, holy shit, okay, like it's really, is this a real thing? Like, are we not being trolled right now? Is this for real? Like, okay, so yeah, hopefully, Studio Madhouse don't let us down. Number 4, It. This movie almost broke me. Um, I was not scared of clowns, but after coming out of this, he Pennywise, he was fucking chilling. There, the Bill Skarsgård, he didn't try to like outdo Tim Curry. He went at it from like a different angle completely, and it works. Like it works really well. How he came at the kids, he still did it in this, kind of like, oh, I'm a clown, Pennywise, and kind of way, but there was like this raw, like almost feral, like animal thing to his performance, like the way he kind of stalked the kids and just looked at them, and would just pause in the middle of conversations, and just you would just catch him staring and drooling, and it's like, Jesus Christ, like he literally is hungry for these kids. I mean, we know that he eats kids, but the way that Bill Skarsgård played it came off in a much different way than how Tim Curry portrayed Pennywise. They're both good performances. It's kind of like Jack Nicholson's Joker to Heath Ledger's Joker. They're different, and they both have things about them that make them unique, and they're both good in their own ways, and they're not really comparable because they are the same character, but they're not doing it in the same way. So it's not like, oh, well, he was more scarier than he was. Like, they were both scary, but they were scary for different reasons. I mean, I've never really had an issue with clowns and shit, but, and I've seen the original It TV movie now. I've never read the book, but that, I mean, shit, Ronald McDonald was my homie growing up. Like, that was cool, I don't have a problem with fucking clowns. But this shit, man, and then, because he got that fucking crooked eye and shit too, so, oh man, oh, no, 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 God, no. But I was really impressed with the kids in this too. One of the kids is from I think his name is like Finn Wolfhard, I think his name is, or something to the effect of that. And he's I think Mike from Stranger Things. And so I know, his, I've seen some of his body of work, so I know he's a good actor, but all the kids in this were good. The bullies, they were good, though I feel that, and I mean, I don't know if that's just the way the character is written, if that's the way he's portrayed in the books, I don't know, but the main bully character I felt was a wee bit kind of overzealous and came across kind of cartoony. He also felt like, I don't know how you've survived in the real world this long and you've not been killed or put in prison or something by this point. It's like, yeah, I get it, your dad's like the sheriff or whatever, but still at this point, with some of the crazy shit that you do, like, I'm surprised you ain't got fucked up sooner than this. But I was impressed with all the kids, but I was really impressed with the director and or the writer, just the creative team behind putting this together, how they handle the themes of childhood and discovering, like your sexuality and becoming an adult and going through emotional and physical changes and coping with that and still trying to maintain your childhood at the same time. Like, I've heard some people kind of complain about how much swearing and, things like that the kids do in the movie, and they're really vulgar. But I'm like, fucking kids talk like that, man. Like kids are like that. I know I swore a lot when I was a kid. I mean, it's probably why I swear so much now. I try not to make it too much of a part of my vocabulary, but unfortunately, yeah, I do. But kids, they're like that when when they're not around adults. It's that you know oh, we're this is taboo, we're not supposed to do this, so it makes this cool. They see adults cuss and teens cuss around them, swear and stuff, so they talk like that, and they talk about fucking and sex and jerking off and all that kind of shit. They're human, they're kids, they're just small adults, they're young adults. Young adults. But the girl character, I liked how they were handling her, kind of being like this outcast in the town because, everybody kind of calls her a slut and things like that. It's because, she's, a young girl who's developing into a woman, and she's going through these bodily changes, and people are noticing her more, and she's catching the attention of boys and things like that. So they want her attention and affection, and they think that it looks good on them to, even if they have to lie and pretend that they've had some kind of interaction with her, on some kind of sexual level, that will help them somehow and give them, that, oh, I'm cool, and all my friends are gonna, respect me now, and they're gonna wanna hang out with me more because I'm the cool kid who, had sex with the hot girl that everybody likes. I liked that they addressed those things, and they really, did a lot with her character. Like, there was a lot of fucked up shit in that movie that happens to those kids, and especially to that girl, and I thought it was all handled very tastefully, and it didn't come across as, creepy, unless it was a moment where it was purposely meant to come across as being creepy. Overall, it was a great movie. I mean, honestly, it would be probably, one of my favorite, horror movies, of all time, if I didn't know that there's still another part to this that's coming, because it's when the second half of this comes, it's going to be that which makes me judge it as a whole, because it's one continuous story that they've just broken up into two movies. I don't really look at it as a sequel. It was always meant to be one story. So we'll see how that turns out. But so far, I got high hopes. Number 3, Thor Ragnarok. I have never liked the Thor movies. Ever. Like, Thor 1 was corny as shit to me. Like, all that, slapstick humor, like, the only part, I mean, literally, and it's in the trailers and everything, but for whatever reason, I just find this funny. The only part in the Thor movies, in the first Thor at least, that I found funny was when they're in the diner and he throws the cup on the ground and he's like, another! He's like, I like this, another! He throws it on the ground. Like, that's funny to me for whatever reason. But all the other fish out of water humor was so ridiculous. Like, it's like, oh, look, he's getting, knocked out by, the door of the truck, and they're knocking him out in the hospital, and Thor's knocked out again. And I'm like, it was just all this pratfall slapstick, physical comedy, and then it was like mashed up against this, like, Shakespearean, uh almost like West Wing type, dialogue and setting and stuff. Like, there was always this weird clash. And then, I think we can universally agree for the most part that Thor 2 is just trash. Like, it's not horrible, but come on, man, Thor 2 is not all that great. Like, the fight scenes in Thor 2, and how I like that they were taking it more seriously. I thought that that's the direction that they were going. Like, they had got the director was somebody from like Game of Thrones or something like that, and I'm figuring, okay, all right, they're gonna make this shit, some hardcore like epic Braveheart type shit. But no, it turned out to be just it was that, but at the same time, it had this weird humor and comedy in it. Still, they were still trying to do these. It went from like slapstick pratfall humor to sitcom-y humor. It just stuff that felt like it'd be in like The Office or like Parks and Recreation, or something like that. Some kind of show along those lines. But this one finally hit some kind of, I don't know what kind of spell they had to cast to from Doctor Strange to get this to work, but they found the right balance of elements of comedy, seriousness, action, and pacing to actually make this movie not only the best Thor movie, but one of the best Marvel movies overall. Like, I mean, this is up there in, Avengers, Civil War, Guardians territory. Like, this is impressive, especially for the director. I feel like I'm gonna slaughter his name, but I'm gonna try my damnedest. Taika Waititi, I think is how you say his name. And for him to come from like indie movies, and smaller budget backgrounds into something like this and be able to thrive in this is impressive. Like, Marvel has been really good about finding directors for these movies who come from a small background of indie movies or smaller budget movies, or even like completely different like genre movies. Like, the Russo brothers come from Community and shit like that, like comedy shows, and they made the Winter Soldier, Civil War, and are going to be making both the Infinity War movies, or whatever the fourth Avengers movie is going to be called, because they're not doing a two-part now. But they've been good about getting these directors, and Taika Waititi has been no different. Like, he comes from this, nowhere background, really. Like, I hadn't heard of him or seen any of his movies before this. And this guy, I don't know, he made Thor relatable. Like, I gave a shit about Thor. I was shocked. I was like, oh my god, like, where is this person been? Like, this whole movie, in his character, I mean, it mirrors the movie. I mean, he's upbeat, he's funny. I mean, he fights well. There's good action in the movie. Like, this is what Thor needed from the beginning. If they would have presented Thor like this from the first movie, he would probably be on Iron Man levels of popularity. Like, no bullshit. It's that serious. This was a really good movie, and some people, I don't get fanboys sometimes. Like, some people just aren't happy with shit. I loved Hela as a villain. Like, Hela was really cool to me. Now, granted, she speechified a lot, and had a her whole monologue and things like that. I mean, hey, but that's just kind of comes with the territory of the comic book villains. You got to speechify, you got to monologue. That's just how these things go. But I loved Hela because I loved Hela's backstory. I mean, honestly, she's almost the hero of the story. The whole thing is about Odin disowning her and lying about her existence and trying to cover up the fact that the reason that I mean it seemed like a lot of movies this year had a lot of metaphors and allegory for politics and society and different things like that, because with this it almost mirrors like the history of the United States. Like you know Asgard was built off the backs of conquering other places and taking their wealth and this, that, and the other. And then after we've done all this stuff, we've decided, oh, we're going to be benevolent now and not rape and pillage and do all this fucked up shit to all these other people. And we're just going to kind of gloss over that and cover that bad history that we don't want to talk about up and just call it good. And Hela comes from that time, and she helped him conquer those worlds and loot and plunder and enslave those people and build Asgard's empire into what it is today. Like, he didn't get that power. He didn't just wake up one day and he was just the king of Asgard. Like, you got there by taking that shit. And she was like, motherfucker, I was with you from the beginning. I helped you get this shit. And then once you decided that you didn't want to rule that way anymore, I'm supposed to just get casted out while you go and try and rewrite history and make it seem like, oh no, I've always been cool. Like, what do you mean? Like, I love everybody. Like, what are you talking about? I'm the greatest. So I thought, like, man, I was with when they was explaining what happened with her, and they went to the throne room, and she's tearing up the ceiling, and it's showing all the stuff that had been built over from the past, and she's going through the backstory. I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, like, I'm on her side. Like, Hela has a hella good point. Pun totally intended. Hela was the hero of the story all the way until she went and started killing the innocent people, in Asgard, and just the common folk who were Asgardians, but they weren't, like warriors and stuff like that. Like that's when she lost me. I was like, okay, see, I was with you all the way up until that point. But still, though, that's what made her a good villain, because she had a damn good point. I was like, man, he kind of fucked you over. It's like, you didn't do nothing wrong. Like, oh, it was cool when we was doing it together, but now that you want to stop, oh, I'm the bad guy. Like, she was a good villain, and she still was kind of quippy and things like that. Like, she kind of shared the same humor that was spread throughout the movie as well. I mean, Hulk is fucking Hulk. Hulk was dope. But I really liked what they did with Mark Ruffalo and his characterization in this. Like, he felt a lot more fun, because, I know that's just kind of his character in general, but Bruce Banner's always been the most blandest one. Everybody talks shit about Hawkeye, but it's like, really, honestly, Bruce Banner, I mean, him and Hawkeye are interchangeable to me. I mean, I honestly like Hawkeye a bit more than Hulk, because Hulk is cool, but when he's Bruce, no one cares, and you don't really care about when he's on the screen what's happening. But in this, they made him fun and funny and kind of bumbling, but I like that, though. I did like that. And Hulk, man, why have we not, I mean, granted, yes, he does, Hulk smash, puny god, all that kind of stuff, but, why have we not had the Hulk's intellect be to where he could hold full-on conversations from the beginning? Like, there is so much mileage you can get out of Hulk being able to hold a conversation that you'd almost want to do it where you just went, you know what, we're just gonna make Hulk, all CG character all the time, and he's just gonna be like, our Groot of this shit. He's just always the Hulk. Like, he's never gonna go back to being Bruce Banner again. We'll just Mark Ruffalo. We just gonna cut you a paycheck to just come in and do some voice acting for a little bit. But seeing Hulk like that and him being able to interact with the other characters like that, because before it was always through, like physical comedy, but for him to be able to hold a conversation and talk, gave for a lot of good moments. And I'm interested to see when we get to Infinity War, now that he has that intellect like that and he can interact with people, will he, be able to have some dramatic scenes as the Hulk and be able to hold conversations and things like that. Like, I'm really interested in the possibilities that we have with Hulk now because of this movie. Seeing as how he won't get his own movie because of rights issues, they'll just have to work it out with cameos in other movies, but they can still give him an arc throughout, and I like that they're still trying to do that. One big awesome thing that was in this that I was not expecting, I was shocked that they destroyed Asgard, like completely changed the status quo. Like, Asgard is gone. Like, there is no, oh, it's destroyed and we can rebuild and this, that, and the other. No, it is gone. Like, they have to, these motherfuckers is homeless now. Like, the ones that didn't get killed off by Hela and during the fight and the escape and all that are on that ship, and who, if hopefully if Thanos don't kill they motherfucking ass, like, who's ever left, like, there is no home for them to go back to. That shit is gone. Now, I know I keep hearing people online talk about there's possibly, in Infinity War they're going to use a time, stone to try and reset everything and whatever. Like, I don't think they're going to go that route, because when you start doing that kind of shit, it's like, okay, well, if we can just reset every goddamn thing. Like, they kind of got away with it in Doctor Strange because they did something fun and different with it, but if we start bringing elements to that in there, then it's like, okay, well, why can't we just go back and just undo everything that's ever happened to anybody? Like, Tony Stark should never even be Iron Man, because there should never have been the weapons that got to the terrorists in the first place type shit. It raises too many questions, when you start doing stuff like that. So I don't think they're going to go down that route. But as it stands right now, Asgard is gone, and all the Asgardians are technically, for all intents and purposes, wandering space trying to look for a new home. And I did not expect that in, one of the last few movies right before Infinity War, for us to change the status quo like that. Now, granted, as far as Earth is concerned, that's not a big status quo change, but for the larger MCU, that's a big fucking deal. And I'm really, really interested to see where we go from here now. Number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming. Finally, he's home. When it was announced that Marvel and Sony had reached a deal to bring Spider-Man into the MCU, oh my god. Okay, a little sidebar. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, hands down, by far. No question. No competition. Fuck a Batman, Superman, Wolverine, all that shit. Hulk, fuck them. All of them. Cap, all of them. Spider-Man is the guy for me. And he has been such in the comics, he's such an important element of the Marvel universe. I mean, he's teamed up and paired up with so many different characters and had so many different, been in so many different story big events in the comics where he's, crossover with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and the X-Men and, all these other different characters. And to not have him in these movies has always bothered me, especially when he has, movies that are coming out by Sony, and I'm like, why can't these things be together? And when it finally happened, I was so happy. When he showed up in Civil War, oh, God, if I'd have died right then, I would have been in heaven. But I'm glad that I didn't, because I got to see this movie, and this is the Spider-Man that I have wanted for years. Like, the little taste of him that we got in Civil War was a good morsel to start, but we finally got a full feature-length film with Tom Holland as Peter Parker, and he does great. Like, he embodies that awkward teenager. Like, he doesn't have to be like a super nerd like how Tobey Maguire played him, or he doesn't have to be like, oh, too cool for school type shit like Andrew Garfield played him. Like, there's a happy medium right in between that he plays the character, and that's what Peter is. Like, Peter's not totally, socially awkward and can't, function in the real world like a normal person, but yet at the same time, he's not this cocky, obnoxious shit. Not until he's in the costume. That's how he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be this kind of weird, dorky, awkward kid, but he's just a normal, basically, kid who's, into science and things like that. It's not until he's in the costume to where he becomes, that kind of cocky, obnoxious, overly talkative, character. And he's like that because it's his coping mechanism for, his nervousness and him being afraid is by overcompensating in his ego. That's what he does because he's a child, like he's supposed to be. And this is what I've been wanting. We've always been getting these, weird characterizations of Peter, and none of them have been true. Either the Spider-Man was right and the Peter Parker was wrong, or vice versa, or both were wrong or right, or well, none of them were both right until now. This is what it was supposed to be. And this movie, all it needed to be was exactly what it was. Just a small, fun little movie that was inconsequential to like the bigger MCU or anything like that. Because we're still on, touchy ground right now with this Marvel Sony shit. Like, we don't know where this is all going. Like, they could, theoretically pull out. Now, they would probably have to pay Marvel a bunch of money for breaking a contract that they have with them. But for all intents and purposes, they're still moving forward with this Venom movie and this Black Cat shit and everything else that they've been talking about. Shit, they might dig up that Aunt May spy movie again. Who fucking knows? I'm like, they are bound and determined to milk this Spider-Man shit for everything it's fucking worth. Marvel be damned. So, we're still kind of on shaky ground with them. So, with that being said, they want to make sure that they're, integrating him in such a way to where I think if for whatever reason, they had to take him back out of the MCU, that they could do it in a way to where it would make sense, and, he's not like a major staple of the universe. But the way he is integrated is just enough to where it's like, yes, like he was always here and he was always meant to be here, and this is the universe that he exists in, and it's fun to get to see, how the general public just, perceives and reacts to the superheroes and things like that, because, for the most part in these movies, we see it from the eyes of the heroes themselves, or people who directly interact with the heroes. We don't get to see, just like the regular city, population, and how, what they think about these, people, and how the superheroes are integrated into like everyday life, and just education and things like that. I mean, hell, Bruce Banner, they had a poster of him in the classroom up there with like Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton and shit. Like, it was really cool. Like, Peter felt like a kid. New York felt like New York, a very diverse, city with a lot of different people and a lot of different, cultures and ethnicities and things like that. Like, it wasn't just, it looked like New York. It felt like, yes, this is a real place. I I can't do anything but gush over this movie because it's perfect. It's exactly what it needed to be, and I loved that the director came at it in the way that he did with making it like a John Hughes type movie, like giving it that Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off type vibe. I mean, even making like direct references to that movie. That was what he needed. Like this kind of you know almost like genius, but at the same time accidental genius. You know, that's how the movie needed to feel. And I mean, it was perfect. I mean, Michael Keaton, he did an awesome job as the Vulture. He was really good. He that the whole scene where they're going to the homecoming dance and he's talking to Peter in the car and he's threatening him with the gun. Like that was a great scene. Like the movie took a real serious turn because it felt real, lighthearted and really inconsequential. And again, some people didn't like that, but I thought it was just fine. I'm like, this is what it needed to be. I'm like, we didn't need it to be over super serious or the end of the world or anything like that because it's not the end of the world. Like there's a much bigger thing coming up, and we don't need to start blowing his stories up into these big overblown things like they've been in the past, where like every villain is like trying to destroy the entire city or the world or something crazy like that. Like we didn't need Spider-Man to face a threat like that. We needed something on a lower tier level that he could take on in his first movie and then build his threats up from there, because I mean he finna face Thanos, so any shit you would have thrown at him in this movie would have been nothing compared to what's finna come up immediately after that the next time we see him. So Michael Keaton was a great pick to be the Vulture, and the way he played him as this just regular Joe, who was just trying to make some money and take care of his family and make an honest living, that kind of got fucked over by the government, the man, so to speak. And this was him fighting back and trying to take back what was his and get some agency back in his life. And he was a good villain. He was relatable. It was good. He played him good, and the whole twist with him being Liz Allen's dad and everything, I was like, oh man, like that, I did not see that shit coming. And that's the thing that's always bugged me in the Spider-Man movies, and they don't break the tradition here, but this time it didn't feel so glaring, maybe because I didn't know from the very beginning, so the reveal kind of hit it up until that point, so maybe it makes me feel a little bit different about it. But all of Spider-Man's villains are somehow directly connected to him or related to him directly in some way or another, and that usually bothers me in the Spider-Man movies. But this time they did it in such a way to where it didn't give me much pause as far as my consideration for how I felt about the movie. Um, it's a gift and a curse with this thing. It's I say that because now I dread the thought of Sony taking him back even more, because it's always been like, oh well, they didn't just outright buy the rights to the character back. Like Sony, for all intents and purposes, still owns the rights to Spider-Man as far as live action movies go, and I think cartoons as well. But still, just in movie form in general, owns the rights to the character. And Marvel is just kind of borrowing or kind of helping Sony out. And this movie was so good that I am afraid if they take him back, or when this contract is up and they don't renew it or figure something out or what, that all this goodwill that we've built up after the Amazing Spider-Man movies, after Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man, has kind of been on the ropes for a while, and we've finally got him to where we want, And now I'm just so scared that they're gonna take him from us. They're gonna take him from us, and I don't want that to happen. So I don't know. I'm almost like, if the movies are at this quality level, maybe they'll just keep letting them do it, and it's like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why reinvent the wheel type thing? So let's all just hope that that's the case, and we get to keep Spider-Man in the MCU, because so far they've been doing him right. Number one, Assassin's Creed Origins. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it right now. This is the best in the franchise as far as the games go that are on consoles. I haven't played all the little handhelds and spin-off games and things like that, but as far as the main canon games, the main story games, yeah, this is the best one. I said it hands down. The balance of activities that you have, from your assassination missions to you have your gladiator matches, you have your races, you have your puzzles to solve, artifacts to collect, tombs and pyramids to explore. I mean, the game is just so dense with things to do. It's almost overwhelming to think about, but the way that they parse the game out, it's just enough to keep you wanting to uncover, and it's like, okay, well, you want to dig deeper and see, okay, well, what else is in here, what more can I do, what else is around here. I mean, there's been so much attention to detail placed in this game. It's ridiculous. From when you walk in the sand, your weight kind of presses down, and you kind of sink into it a little bit, to where when you use your bow and arrow and you let go, his chest jiggles, the muscles jiggle, and you can see the pores in their skin when you zoom in on them to take pictures. I mean, there's just so much attention to detail placed. I mean, the water effects look beautiful, and I believe this is the same team that worked on Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which was one of the other most popular entries in the franchise, that focused more on the pirate aspect and the sailing and the ships and things like that, and swimming and underwater. So I definitely expect nothing less from that team as far as water effects and things like that go. I mean, there's just so much shit to do in this game. I'm like 30 plus hours into it, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. Like, there is so much more to do, and the story, it feels like it's gonna have this kind of like abrupt ending, but once you get to that point, it opens up into this even bigger sprawling thing that takes you all over the place, and you get to interact with all these other historical figures like you have in prior Assassin's Creed games, and you get to play parts in these historical events that happen throughout, and see it from a different perspective, and learn behind the scenes, so to speak, things that isn't taught in the history books, so to speak, in the the lore of the Assassin's Creed franchise. But it's incredible. I mean, the things that they've added into it that's new. I mean, they've pretty much completely redone the fighting mechanics. Everything feels different, and it feels a lot more organic in the way that the AI attacks you, and the way that you can control your character, and how you can counter and things like that. And your attacks are a lot different, and switching between different gear and weapons and things like that is a lot more fluid. Like everything felt really static in the Assassin's Creed games up until this point. Like that's been a big issue people have always had with the franchises, that the fight system was never all that great. It was kind of like a, you just kind of stand there and wait for somebody to try and attack you, and then you counter and kill them. And it was basically just like a waiting game, and a bunch of people stand in a circle around you and wait till attack you one by one. And in this, you could be getting attacked by multiple people at the same time. You can use people as shields to block other attacks and attack, them with that person's weapon. I mean, the fighting mechanics in this one have been revamped, and it's really, really fucking cool. It's really fun to fight. In any other Assassin's Creed games, I always kind of avoided fighting because it felt more like a chore than something fun. It was really monotonous and tedious, and I would try to do a lot of more assassinating and sneaking around. But in this, I wasn't afraid to run head in and fight, one on one, and didn't care about alarms and guards and things like that, because just getting into a battle was fun in itself. And then you have the gladiator matches where you go to the arena and you get to fight there, and you rank up, and there's tournaments and these kinds of things. The game it's so deep, and there's so much shit to do. I mean, all the Assassin's Creed games have been good about giving you a lot of content within the game, but it always felt like they gave it all to you at once and they didn't kind of sparse it out. This feels a lot more sparsed out, and it's not overwhelming right off the bat. It kind of eases you into it, and then by the time you feel comfortable, you can kind of look around and see like all these things that are open to you now that you've progressed slightly more in the game. The main character, Bayek, he's interesting. He's a lot better than Connor was in Assassin's Creed 3. Like, I didn't hate Connor in Assassin's Creed 3, but I didn't love him either. He was kind of for me, he was whatever. He sure as hell was no Ezio, and he wasn't no Altair by any means. But, he was alright. Bayek is a lot more interesting, and he's a lot more layered protagonist. Like, he simultaneously is very thoughtful and wise, and he thinks before he acts, while at the same time he's reckless and he rushes head on into things, and he is stubborn and can kind of be blinded by just his own ambition and anger and desire to have revenge. And it makes him so human because he is conflicted in those ways, but he can be compassionate and understanding when he needs to be, while at the same time being vicious and merciless, like he kind of needs to be an assassin. You have to have that kind of balance of both. His story and how the assassins start was really interesting, and I was really excited to see what they did with that, because for the most part in the series, it mostly seemed like the Assassin's Brotherhood really started with Altair and his people up until that point, but it's much older than that and goes back much further than that. And so I was wanting to see, okay, well, how are we going to show how the seeds were planted to where we are now with where the Assassin's Brotherhood is. And so far it's been really interesting seeing how we get there. We finally got one set in Egypt. We've been asking for that for like so long, and this was a much needed change of scenery. Like, that one of people's biggest complaints about the Assassin's Creed games were that they were feeling really samey, like they weren't doing anything innovative and new and different enough to make the fact that another game was coming out even feel justified. So after some bad receptions of their last few games, and a lot of bugs and things like that on release, they took a year off and really honed in and refined the game and got it to where it needed to be and polished it really well and released it. And they needed to take that year off. They've been trying to crank these things out with these different teams every year, and it's been to mixed results at best. And they needed to take a break and really sit back, look at what they had done, and say, okay, how can we make this better? How can we refine this? How can we polish this up? How can we get this right? And I think that they did good. I mean, I'm back with it. I mean, I've always liked the Assassin's Creed franchise. It fell off pretty fucking bad for a while there, but I think they're back. I think they got their shit together, and I'm with it. I'm ready to get off this fucking podcast so I can go keep playing it now. All right, guys, that's it. That's my best things of 2017. What's on your list? Is there anything that you think that should have been on mine? Like, Mike, how could you forget this thing that just happened last year? Like, how did you not see this movie? How are you not reading this? Why are there no any comics on there? What the hell is going on with your list? Anything that you guys want to add, you can go ahead and leave in the comments below. You can find me on Twitter. Look for @GiantLeap, the number 4 Geeks. And on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, and Instagram, just look up One Giant Leap for Geeks. See you guys next time. Now, don't get me wrong. Star Wars is racist in the motherfucker. George Lucas and that fucking, god damn it. If I knew the fucking lore better, I could tell you the name of them, but you know exactly who I'm talking about. Them fish-faced motherfuckers who speak in that, like, racist ass, stereotype Japanese, that, oh, yo, Luke Skywalker, and all that kind of shit. Like, that is some foul ass racist shit. And